Can you hear me, Laura?
I can,
Okay,
yes.
because I hit something and I just didn't know what it did. We are live, so we are
Yes.
waiting for people to join us. If anybody's listening, we've got 3 more minutes or so before we're going to get started. Good morning, Nabe. I'm not sure if I pronounced that correctly, but we're glad to have you here. Good morning, Martha. It's Julia behind the scenes. We're doing a little countdown here, and we'll get started in a couple of minutes. Just waiting for a few more people to join us. We're going to be starting in a minute and a half. Looking forward to chatting with everybody this morning. Hi everyone, Julia Usher here, recording live from my basement test kitchen here in St. Louis, Missouri. I am so glad you're joining me today. For those of you who don't know me, I am a cookie artist and I'm also founder and host of my namesake cookie art competition called Julia M. Usher's Cookie Art Competition, naturally. I am here today with the lovely Laura Saporiti from Parma, Italy, to talk to you more about the competition and to get all of your competition questions answered.
Hi everyone, Julia Usher here, recording live from my basement.
We got a little bit of feedback here, but we're back.
Sorry.
No problem. I'll be introducing Laura in a sec. I just wanted to give everyone a quick overview of the competition before we get into the Q&A. A little bit of history about it. It isn't new this year. It's been around for quite some time. If you didn't know, it started about 7 or 8 years ago at the famed Carrie Vincent's Oklahoma State Sugar Art Show as a subcategory and competition there that I ran. I was really honored to have that opportunity given to me by Carrie, and I've tried to carry on her legacy in encouraging the sugar arts and encouraging people to grow and develop within the sugar arts. When Carrie retired her competition in 2018, I had to search for another host, and I found one, fortunately, in St. Louis, which was called Show Me Sweets. I've always run this competition at another cake competition. Show Me Sweets was a great experience. We actually filmed the competition for a Food Network documentary that year, but unfortunately Show Me Sweets shuttered their show following the competition. So once again, I was in the mode of looking for a host for the competition, and after some searching, decided to join the ranks of That Takes the Cake show in Austin, Texas. It was held there in 2020 and will return to the Austin Cake Show in 2022. Due to COVID, however, the show did not occur this year, and so I decided it was a good opportunity for me to take it online. So this is our first ever virtual competition, and it may be the last. So we have definitely pivoted and shifted and advanced the competition in the face of the pandemic. And I know all of you have done so with your business lives and cookie lives as well. That is one of the reasons that we chose pivot and essential as some of our themes for the competition, which we'll talk about in a little bit. At any rate, that's a little bit of history about the competition. One advantage of it being online this year is that we can more freely access, or you can more freely access the competition no matter where you are in the world. So the competition is open to anyone, everywhere, of any skill level. That's the first thing to know. So I am looking forward to seeing many more entries this year from all over the world and seeing your various takes on the theme. Let me move on quickly to schedule and prizes, and then I'll introduce Laura and we'll get started with the Q&A. And yes, Bev had a question, will this be recorded and posted so we can refer back to it if necessary? Yes, this session is being recorded. It will post directly to my Facebook business page. And I will probably also post a recording of it to Cookie Connection. For those of you following the competition, most of the activities surrounding the competition is going to occur on my site, Cookie Connection. There is a category under the blog called Julia's Cookie Competition, where you'll see all of our posts, and I'll probably post the video there later today or tomorrow. But it is being recorded right now. A bit about schedule. So the competition registration has opened. It opened on July 12th, and we are encouraging early registrations, mostly because, as I said, this is the first time we've done this virtually, and we don't really know what to expect, and especially in terms of number of entrants. Number of entrants determines how we judge, how much feedback we give you guys, et cetera, et cetera. So we really want to do our best in serving your feedback needs. But to do that, it would really be helpful to have an advance idea of number of entries before we hit October 15th. So if you are on the fence about registering, I encourage you to do it. It's a nominal fee. It is non-refundable, but it's nominal should you decide to pull out at the end, which we hope no one does. So the registration has opened, and again, information about registration can be found on my site, Cookie Connection. I'll be posting the link to it under this video once it posts to my business page. And the registration process is kind of two-part. I encourage you to read the long post on Cookie Connection first to know all the details, but then you'll go to Eventbrite, which is my event management site, where you'll actually pay the registration fee, and then a number of other links will be sent to you automatically by Eventbrite, which will allow you to ultimately upload your entries to Cookie Connection. Entries are not due until October 15th, so the good news is you've got plenty of time to create. I like to create a competition environment where people don't feel stressed, but rather can really test their skills, try new techniques, and really put themselves out there. We'll talk a little bit about what competition means to us, and it really, in my mind, largely is about stretching your own individual skills. We will be aiming to announce finalists around November 15th and then the actual winners towards the end of November. But again, that's subject to change depending on the number of entries we get. So once again, we encourage you to register as early as possible. Okay, on to prizes. They are pretty darn cool, and I have many sponsors to thank for them, which we'll do at the end of the session. We've got 13,000 in prizes, actually a little bit more than that now, about 7,000 of which is cash, which is going to be divided across 6 winners in 2 categories. We've got 2 categories of cookie art. We're judging 2D cookies and 3D cookies. 3D cookies is kind of a new term which I coined a few years ago as I was doing a lot of this kind of work on my YouTube channel. And I know in looking at things online, 3D means different things to different people, which is quite all right. However, for purposes of this competition and for posting to my site Cookie Connection, we have a very specific definition of what that means, which we'll talk about a little bit later. That can sometimes be a point of confusion, and we want to make sure that everybody's really crystal clear on that. So, with that said, and I also want to point out that in addition to these 6 winners across 2 categories, I am giving out 1 Best in Show award. It's called the Carrie Vincent Best in Show Award, and it's in honor of my memory of Carrie Vincent, who was my longtime mentor, probably my first and biggest mentor in my sugar arts career. I miss her dearly, and am just so grateful for all she did to further my sugar arts career. And I am hoping through this award and through this competition, I can kind of pay it forward and carry on with Carrie's legacy to some extent in the cookie world. Big shoes to fill, but that's my aim. So let me introduce Laura. And I'm going to move to the screen that now shows her lovely face. Good morning.
Hello. Hello.
So I'm just going to...
Am I on screen?
You are. You look beautiful. Okay. I am just going to... I'm going to briefly introduce her and then turn this over to questions. If you guys don't have questions, we have some prepared questions that we typically hear that we want to address. We'll probably address them anyway. But now, a little bit about Laura. She's an immensely talented sugar artist in all realms, cake, cookies, you name it. She hails from Italy. She's in Parma this morning joining us live. I love the power of virtual, guys. So I'm pretty excited to try it out on the competition. She is a new judge of the competition this year. I will not be judging because I am going to be seeing everybody's entries as they come in, and we judge blind. We don't want our judges to know whose work they're seeing so they can be as objective as possible. So I was stuck with the need to find a judge this year to replace me, and I found Laura. She's really the perfect fit for a number of reasons. She is highly skilled, won numerous competitions all over the world. As a result of that, she's been asked to judge competitions all over the world. She's judged competitions in Italy, India, China, Istanbul, and I'm sure I've missed a number of other countries. So she is uniquely qualified to talk to you here today, not only about what she would look for in a competition piece, but also how she prepares for competitions. So I'm really excited to have her part of the team. She also has an international perspective on things. Ingredients, competition rules all vary by country. And so she is able to bring that power of information to the table here and shaping our competition into something bigger than what it was. So thank you, Laura. So glad to have you here today.
Thanks to you for inviting me. This is a huge honor to me, and I'm really, really excited about this new possibility that you are giving to me, actually. And I'm also happy about the chance of talking about both my point of view, meaning the competitor point of view, coming from last year winning, and also the judge point of view. But I think that the chance of talking about my experience when I competed last year is even more important probably today.
Okay, well, good. Well, I'm eager to hear about all of it, as I'm sure everybody listening is. I can see comments here from my broadcasting station, so if you guys are typing them in, we will be looking for questions there. So far, I don't see any. Did we miss any, Laura? Were you looking? Okay.
No, not questions.
Okay, so we're gonna. I encourage you guys just to whatever you have to ask, just pop it up there. In the meantime, we're gonna proceed with some questions that typically come to me or that I hear after people have competed if they had only known kind of questions. So we're going to run through a couple of those, but we'll probably interrupt whatever we're doing whenever we see a question come in from you. So I'm going to turn to one of the first things we typically hear, and then have Laura address what she thinks of that question or comment. So one thing we often hear people say, particularly with my challenge, because the stakes seem really high, the prize money seems really high, people seem intimidated by that. They often say, but my work isn't good enough, I don't think I could win, so maybe I shouldn't enter. So we want to address that point, and I'm going to hand it over to Laura to give some thoughts on that, and I'll interject as I have anything additional to add.
Okay, thank you. Well, whenever I hear people ask that, wondering why should they enter because they think they're not good enough, my reply has always been, and it is now even more, you don't enter a competition to win and especially to compete against other people, but you enter a competition to compete with yourself in a way. So it's a learning process. The best part of competing, whatever competition actually we are talking about, cakes, cookies, whatever, even outside of the sugar art world, is always about putting yourself to test. And learning more skills, learning your limits and trying to overcome them. This is the best thing that you can bring home from a competition. And regard to this, I can say that I remember my very first important competition that I did, I think it was like 10 years ago, something like that. It was a pastry competition, so it was not related to the sugar art world, but anyway, it was my first very important competition. And I think that the amount of information and experience and deep understanding that I got from that first competition that I entered has no comparison, because it was really a pivot moment. It was really a turning moment, because I completely switched my point of view and understood many things that before competing I was not realizing. So I think that this is the most important reason that you should rely on if you decide to enter. You are not competing against people, but you are entering a learning experience. This is what I think.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. You guys will also be hearing from other competitors as we roll through this process. I've got some videos of people that have competed in my competition in the past, and they, for the most part, echo that statement that when they first joined, they were beginners, many of them, and they used the competition as an opportunity to stretch their skills. It's a really low-risk environment. Nobody needs to know you've actually entered but me. So, you can do whatever you want. And if you happen to win, that's just, upside. But the winning really is in what you learn. And what you take away from other competitors, too. It'll be a little harder to reap that benefit this year because you won't see other competition pieces on a physical competition floor. But I hope to be posting some of them after the fact and engaging some people in dialogue about what it is they did and why and how they did it. So you can learn through that process as well.
Yeah, I agree about this, because I remember the last year when I competed into your competition and I won. I remember that actually it was my first ever 3D cookie competition. And I should say that I had some doubts myself about the 3D cookies thing. And I remember that when I was there and I saw the entries from the other competitors, especially the second and the third winners, I remember that I learned a lot just looking at them, because I didn't realize that there were other possibilities, that just because I've never seen anything like that before, I didn't know that you could do something like that. So just looking at those entries, I learned more. So this is the most important thing.
And the judges learn more too, to be honest with you. And that's the other whole point of competition in my mind, is to really advance the state of the industry and art as a whole. and doing that collectively, because we see new techniques as well hit the floor, and that then generates ideas for us, and that then elevates the next level of competition. So,
and probably this year, because it is an international, well, it has always been an international competition, but because this year is online, we probably will have more international entries, and it will probably enrich the competition because we have so many different backgrounds, so even the techniques will be different, and I think it will be amazing probably to see all the solutions that competitors will bring on.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. Hey, we've got a really good question from Bev, which apologize if I didn't make clear. So I'm going to repeat that, and then we'll answer that. And then if we have more on this topic, we'll continue. Otherwise, we'll move on. So Bev asked, question, must we have all photos, writing, etc. ready at the time we register and pay for our entry? The answer to that is no. The registration process is just to indicate that you intend to enter. You go to Eventbrite and you pay a $15 fee, and it gets you registered to enter. That will give us an early indication of how many people are going to be competing, which, as I said before, is pretty important for us because I may have to redesign the whole judging process if we have many more entries than we've had in the past. And I need to allow myself a little bit of time for that. You will, once you register on Eventbrite, you'll get an email confirmation of your registration immediately from Eventbrite. And you should look at that because in it contains the links to Cookie Connection where you will later upload your entries. So you don't need to have all of your materials ready until the October 15th deadline, but I highly recommend you register early for the reasons I said, but also so that you can get those competition upload links because you can go in and look at where you're going to be uploading and see the format and get acquainted with that. It's basically, the upload format is basically laid out exactly the same way as the category competition requirements are laid out in the documents that are shared on Cookie Connection. So it's a pretty easy translation from one to the next. But, get in there and get yourself familiarized with where you'll be uploading is not a bad idea either. So I hope that answers your question, Bev. Hi, various people. I see Manu here, who's one of my contributors to Cookie Connection. She does some lovely 3D work, too, as part of her tutorials for the site. Great. So anyway, I think we answered Bev's questions. If there are any others, again, please put them into the chat area or comments area. Anything else to add on But My Work Isn't Good Enough, Laura? Anything more? Or have we addressed that thoroughly?
Well, I think that the most important thing was that you really want to put yourself to test because it's not just, when you, let's say, it's not just learning from comparison with other people, but it's also, again, learning from your own limits because competing is, in a way, can be stressful because, at least if you're like me, I always stress a lot. So, there's always something that doesn't go as you plan it. So I think that it's a learning experience also from the point of view of, coming up with new solutions and new ideas. So I just would stress the importance of trying, at least trying. And this is this year, this chance, because it is an online competition, is the safest of chance that you have. Because as you said, Julia, nobody will know that they entered, so it's not a big deal. You don't have to be afraid of showing out your work, and it's the safest environment as possible. You don't even have to stress about the transportation thing and stuff like that. Yeah, we have to talk about it.
I mean, go ahead and elaborate on that because you mentioned this to me the other day. But another advantage of it being online is you don't have to get your entry to the show, which can be kind of challenging. Exactly. And you can speak to that a little bit.
Yes, because talking about the I think that one of the questions that we frequently have is how do you have to plan for your entry? How do you prepare for your competition? And especially when you are entering a live competition, I mean, in-person competition, you need to stress a lot about the transportation. It's not just a cake-related thing, but it's also a cookie-related thing. And I remember I was stressing a lot last year because I was bringing all my cookies from Italy. I mean, my entry was not completed yet, but I had to plan every single detail about how to transport my cookie and how to assemble them and where to assemble them. Every single step needed to be planned. So this is something that this year you probably will not have the stress of, but at the same time, I would stress the importance of planning everything, because and not just planning every detail of what you think it should be and how it should be, but having second, third, and fourth plans because you never know what can happen. So, but this is again a very important, part of the competition process. I remember the last year I had 3 different solutions for my pieces. I mean, there was obviously my first original project, the project that I was aiming to present. But then I was thinking, what if this piece break? What if that cookie will break and I will not be able to replace it because I didn't have a kitchen, stuff like that. So you always want to have an alternative. So and this is where you put yourself to test. This is where you learn the best, because you go behind your comfort zone.
Yep, I agree. Thank you. We've got another question here I'm going to take from Teresa. Hello. Good morning, Teresa. She asked, can we enter a Christmas cookie? Okay, so we have some rules about what you can and cannot enter. First and foremost, the cookies entered need to relate to the theme for the category that you're entering. We have 2 categories, 2D cookies and 3D cookies. We'll talk about those categories in a second, and each has a different theme. Our themes are related around words that became common vernacular during the pandemic. For 2D, the theme is essential. So we're asking people to create a story in cookies about what the word essential meant to them last year and even as they move into this year. For 3D, the theme is pivot. Again, another word that means to turn on a dime, as so many of us did in the past year. So we're asking people to convey in that 3D construction what that word means to them. We purposely chose some abstract themes as opposed to ones that are very concrete, because we feel that that really pushes people to personalize their entries, to avoid copying other people's work, which is something that we don't permit in the competition, and to really think creatively. So, Teresa, first and foremost, if the Christmas cookie relates to either of those themes and you can describe that in your entry, there's an area where you describe your interpretation of the theme, then that would be acceptable. But if it's a Christmas cookie you created for Christmas last year and it has no bearing on the theme, then it would not be acceptable. But there is an area on the entry form where you describe, this is how I arrived at what I did, and this is how it relates to the theme. If you're choosing something that may not be immediately obvious to the judges as to why you chose it, that's a great area to describe what you did. And oftentimes it's a really creative theme that grabs our attention, not something that one would expect, a creative theme interpretation. Also, a couple of other requirements. The work needs to be original to the competition. Naturally, it needs to relate to the theme, so it should be. It can't have been entered in a previous competition. You have to do it yourself. We do not allow collaborations. Of course, all of these rules are on the honor system. It's very difficult for us to enforce them, but we, look to elevate the standards of the industry, and we trust people to do what they say. So do read the competition rules. They're a set on Cookie Connection that apply to both categories, and they include many of those things. So I hope that answers that question. Laura, I know you're trying to say something.
I think...
Okay.
No, I agree with you. I was just saying that I agree.
Okay. So I don't see any other questions from the group, though, guys, please add them as you have them. So we're going to move on to the other question that we typically get, which is, what the heck is a 3D cookie? So I'm going to ask Laura to perhaps share with us, when she entered for the first time the 3D category last year, what might have been unclear about what a 3D cookie is, and then we'll address what it means for purposes of this competition.
Well, if I have to think about last year, I think that the first thing that came to my mind when I read the rules and I think about what can I do, what am I going to do, was that my piece and every 3D piece needed to be visible from every point of view, 360-degree angle, let's say. So you should be able to, go around the piece and look at this piece from every single angle. And this is very important because sometimes I think this is something that it's more common in the cake world, not in the cookie world, but I would stress this. In my opinion, and probably in here I'm talking first as a judge and second as a competitor, but it's something that I really thought about it last year. Don't just focus on one, let's say, face of your 3D piece. Don't concentrate, don't focus on what you think is the front of your competition, but think about every single vision that you possibly have. This is the most important thing. I remember this, and I can stress again that this is something that I learned entering a competition. Again, it was a cake competition, but it applies to cookies as well. And I remember that I was suggested, I was in a way criticized because the piece that I entered did have a front, even though it was a 3D cookie, it was a 3D cake. And the judge said to me, you should always think about every single angle. It's not just the front that you need to focus on. So this is the first thing that I would stress. The other thing that I actually learned last year from the competition when I was there, I didn't think that it was possible to create a piece with stacked cookies that were later molded and scrubbed in a way that they turned into a 3D piece. One was a face. The second winner presented a face, if I'm not wrong, Julia.
Yeah, it was Stacy Frank did an interesting. There are many different ways to construct 3D cookies, and we can talk about it. But Stacy Frank was the third place winner, I believe, and she had stacked a bunch of cookies vertically, and then sculpted that.
It was a Medusa.
Yeah,
right?
sculpted that. Yes, sculpted that stack into a Medusa's head and filed it down, so it was perfectly smooth. It was really a beautiful piece, but not your typical construction.
The second one was the Babylonese piece, right?
Yes, the second place winner, who you'll be hearing from in a video next week or the following week, was Thomas Blake Hogan, and he had constructed some kind of Egyptian horse or something, some mythical creature, using similar construction techniques.
Exactly. And this is something that I did not think about, just because I never seen anything like that before. So this is something that I learned myself when I was there. And when I was there, I thought, oh, well, I didn't know that I could have done this. So again, this is something that, one of the advantage that you can get from entering a competition, even though you're not aiming to the first place, let's say. So, but to me, the most important thing is that you must be able to look at your piece from every single point of view, not just from the front, not just from the sides, obviously. And then, obviously, you must have, I think we have a minimum of 12 pieces, if I'm not wrong, because a 3D cookie is not just one cookie that is freestanding, right? We don't think about it in that way. So we think about a composition of cookies that create a 3D structure. Am I correct?
That's correct. Yep. So and I'm going to get more into the definition in the next few slides, but For purposes of our competition, a 3D cookie is a cookie construction comprised of a minimum of 12 cookies. Those 12 cookies can be in mini constructions that create a bigger composition, or they can all be in the same piece, and you can use more than 12 cookies. There is a size constraint on the piece, the space it needs to occupy, but a minimum of 12 cookies. It is a construction that needs to be viewed well from all angles, and that is why, in part, why we are asking for a video. We're going to have you guys submit a quick video. You can do it on your iPhone. It doesn't have to be professionally produced. In fact, we'd prefer it not to be. It just needs to show the piece from all angles. We've got one question here, and then I'll elaborate on the definition a little bit. It comes from Judy Ferguson Katie. She got here late, and she asked, are we talking about That Takes the Cake? So to clarify, my competition last year in 2020 was held at That Takes the Cake in Austin, and it will be returning there in 2022 in February. However, this year, they did not hold the competition due to COVID, and I decided I didn't want to wait until 2022 to do it, so I'm running it independently of That Takes the Cake this year online. This is an exceptional thing. However, we may decide to use some aspects of the online competition at That Takes the Cake next year, depending on how it goes. We may want to introduce an online component. So this year, this is strictly run by me. All questions should be directed to the link that I'll be putting up with this post under the comments section on the registration post on Cookie Connection, or you can email me. They shouldn't be directed to That Takes the Cake because they're really not running the competition this year. But we will be returning there because we love it. Hi, Sandy. Sandy has joined us.
Hello.
Sandy Beltran.
Hello.
You can call me Sweetie. She is one of our other judges. She's judged the competition for a number of years and brings a lot of expertise to the judging process. One thing I also consider when selecting judges are their various skill zones, if you will. We all have our strengths and our weaknesses, and so I'd like to bring together a team that represents strengths across the board in terms of technique. So she's really our painting expert. We've got others that are precision piping experts, and so on and so forth. So let me continue with this 3D cookie definition. I think Laura's going to be off screen for a second because I've got some slides I want to show that I developed for another project that I'm working on. But let me just say first, so for purposes of now I see out there people talking about 3D cookies. You know, they'll post a cookie to Cookie Connection or to my Facebook group, and they'll say, here's a 3D cookie. And what they're talking about is a flat cookie that has, you know, maybe some dimension or relief on it because they pressure piped icing, or they've got fondant or some other medium sticking off of it. That's cool and great, but it's not a 3D cookie for this competition. Again, we are talking about multiple cookies pieced together to form a construction that views well from all angles. A piece that is flat and has things sticking off of it would go into our 2D category.
Exactly.
And so just to give you some examples of that, I've got some pictures here on the next slide coming up. And again, I prepared this for something else. So this is an excerpt from a PowerPoint presentation. So the cookie on the left, the heart, that is not a 3D cookie by our definition in the competition. It is a 2D one. It's got some royalizing roses and some fondant pieces that are actually lifted off the surface of the cookie, but it's not a cookie construction. It's basically one flat heart cookie. To the right, you've got 3D constructions. The candelabra in the middle, everything on it is edible. That's another requirement for the competition. Everything on it must be edible except for the candles. If you're using an inedible element in the piece, it needs to be visible and or easily removed if, for instance, you are going to be sharing it with someone to eat it. So this candelabra would qualify because you could take the candles off before serving it. If you have internal supports, they'd need to be visible so that they could be safely removed before people were to eat it. That is a cookie composition comprised of about 21 cookie pieces, and it spans about a foot by a foot. So it would definitely qualify. And off to the far right are teapots and elaborate teapots and sugar bowls, also 3D compositions, multiple cookies formed in different ways. The cookies needn't be flat and they needn't be iced. So you can have embossed or molded cookies on them. You can have contoured and shaped cookies on them. This is where you get really creative with these pieces. Next set of examples, if that wasn't clear enough. I've got a second page. Again, the two floral cookies to the left, the water lilies, marigolds, and the snowdrops, which are the second cookie. Very dimensional. Those are piecework royal icing cookies that I made. All the parts are individual royal icing pieced together, so they have a three-dimensional quality. But the underlying cookie is one, so these would not qualify. However, the two pieces to the right would. The hearts are a little bit hard to see, but there's actually a mirror image heart underneath the top heart, so it forms a little box. Those are super simple 3D cookies, the hearts. I think I just had 4 cookie components to them. So they would not qualify for the competition because there are only 4 pieces in each one. And off to the far right, I definitely have a piece that would qualify. There are over 12 cookie pieces in that structure. So hope that clarifies what we mean by 3D.
Mm-hmm.
It does it? Any questions about any of that?
I don't read any question for now.
I want to welcome Kyla Myers here. She's the
Hello.
She's the organizer of That Takes the Cake, and my gracious host last year, and who will also be hosting the competition again next year. But she is eagerly watching how this online cookie competition unfolds to see if we can bring any learning to it to That Takes the Cake in Austin next year. So welcome, Kyla. Okay. I am going to move on to the third prepared question that we had ready in case you guys didn't have questions, because it's one that comes up a lot, and it's how do I enter? And I want to.
There is actually a question right now, if you don't mind. Did the candles count in the 12 inches square measurement? This is a question from Bev.
Okay, so this is a question from Bev. So looking back at that example let me bring it up. I think it was this one. Nope, it was this one. Okay, let me bring it back up. So Bev asked the questions, did the candles count in the 12-inch square measurement? No, they did not. Now, just to clarify, so the candles added extra height to that piece. However, I didn't do that for the competition. For the purposes of our competition, we do have a size constraint. The entire entry must fit into a 2 by 2 by 3 foot tall area. It doesn't mean it needs to be that big. It can be smaller, but it can't be bigger than that. So that's just another guideline for you guys to follow. We have that guideline so that we're comparing things that are more apples to apples, so that we don't get like mini little cookie presentations and have to compare them to a gargantuan sculpture. So it just helps level the playing field a little bit. So we do have a size constraint for the competition. If you were going to show a photo like this candelabra with candles on it, I would measure the cookie construction alone. I wouldn't add the candles to your dimensions. Just measure the actual cookie construction. And again, you needn't have one construction. You can have multiple constructions that form a bigger piece that fits that area. So for instance, in the competition in 2019 at Show Me Sweets that was filmed for Food Network, Thomas Blake Hogan was the winner of that one, and he had a little vignette that he showed that had the theme that year was something about discovery or following your dream adventure or something to that extent. So his was about exploration. So he was depicting this exotic place. So he had a toucan bird constructed of cookies sitting on a book, and some other tools, exploration tools and things surrounding it. But it was all composed and fit nicely together. A couple things were off to the sides, but the bulk of the cookies were in the dominant pieces. So hopefully that clarifies that. Bev had another related question. So let me get back to Laura's screen so you can see both of us.
Bev is also asking if there is a minimum size too.
Okay, so there's no minimum size to the cookies themselves in either the 3D category or the 2D category. So it's not like you can't have a cookie, you can have mini cookies in your presentation. However, there are minimum cookie counts the number of
Yep.
cookies you have to have, and there are maximum
Sure.
areas that they fill. So for instance, for the 3D cookie category, a minimum of 12 decorated cookies, I'm reading from the actual rules. 12 decorated cookies must comprise the construction. There is no maximum cookie count, but the entire entry has to fit into that 2 by 2 by 3 foot tall area, which gives you a lot of room. Chances are you may not use that, and that's okay. For the 2D category, let me read those while we're on the topic. So the entire entry needs to fit into a 3 by 3 foot space. Doesn't need, there can be some height to it, but we're not really concerned about that. We gave you a little more room here because some people like to do cookie arrays and puzzles and things that are laid out and create a bigger picture. So again, you don't need to use all that space, but we don't want the space it occupies any less than 1 by 1 foot. And there is no maximum cookie count, and we are allowing a single large cookie or a collection of flat cookies. So anyway, all these requirements are spelled out in detail. If you go to the Cookie Connection competition overview page, and again, I'll put that link into the post later when it goes up. I wasn't able to do that prior. That link has links to 2D cookie submission requirements and also to 3D cookie submission requirements. So actually, first of all, that overview contains all the general rules, things like no copying others' works, must be original work, must be done by yourself, things must be edible. Those apply to both categories. It's got links to this, more information for the 2 separate categories, which include all these size constraints and also what you need to submit ultimately with your entry. So those are good things to download early and read even before you start designing. So you're designing to match the requirements of the competition. That's really pretty important.
Yeah.
Okay.
If I may, I would absolutely stress the importance of doing this, reading carefully all the instructions and highlighting every single thing before you actually even think about your piece, because it's more difficult to correct it after you have already have an idea in mind. If you realize that something is not corrected, thinking about the rules. So read the rules first and then think about your piece.
Right, and don't get overwhelmed by the rules. There's some reading there, but they're pretty straightforward competition rules, and they're very similar to what we did last year. So if you've entered the competition before, if I can distill it to a few things, all competition entries have to be original. They have to be made by you. They can't include store-bought materials, and you can't get the help of anybody else. For the specific category requirements for 3D, it has to have a minimum of 12 pieces. It needs to be a constructed piece that views well from all angles, and it has to fit into the 2 by 2 by 3 foot area. For 2D, it has to fit within a 3 by 3 foot area. We will allow any number of cookies within that area. And they can be arranged laying flat or standing up, but basically we really want to see the individual cookies and how they relate to each other. Then as far as what you'll actually submit, there'll be a couple of areas where you can describe how you interpreted the theme and also techniques you used. And in that area about techniques, you want to highlight anything you think is particularly original or that judges may not understand. And then you'll be asked to upload a video that shows the piece from all angles. We're requiring this in both categories, and also anywhere from 10 to 12 photos, depending on the category. But it's all of the same piece. It's just different views of it. So once you've got it made, set it up against a simple backdrop. We don't want to see staging, cluttering the piece. We just want to see the cookie piece alone, and take some photos. The photos should be taken by you. We don't want any digital enhancements. We want to see them as you took it. And don't worry if your photo skills aren't up to the grade of a professional photographer. We're pretty skilled as judges to look past the photo quality and at the quality of the cookie piece.
Yes, absolutely.
Question, this competition is only for U.S. or international. This came in from Diana. Diana, it's an online competition this year, so it's open to anyone, anywhere of any skill level. We do not have skill level categories. We have not found them to be particularly useful in the past when the competition was small, partly because cookie competition was so new. And so everybody coming to the competition was kind of new to the category to begin with. And oftentimes people who had never competed before were winning in the category. So we still don't have skill levels this year. As the competition grows, we may add them. When you register, you'll be asked what your skill level is, and we're collecting that information solely so we can plan future competitions. Lisa Foss, good question. Oh, wait,
Yes.
Martha had
it is a very good one.
Yeah, Martha had one too. Martha first asked, did you say that the 2D cookies could stand up? Yes, they can stand up, but they don't have to. Lisa Foss, can we use store-bought edibles like pretzel rod to support the 3D cookie? Yes, I would allow that, generally speaking, because the 3D cookies do need to be supported in some way. We also allow inedible supports in the 3D category, provided they're pretty obvious. And if you were theoretically going to eat the piece, the person eating it would see it and know to pull it out. We don't want it so deeply embedded that it becomes, a hazard for eating. So you can use inedible supports. We ask that you reveal those supports if they're not obvious in your photos where they are in the little description area. So yeah, you can use store-bought things to support, but the primary cookies you're showing shouldn't be cookies that you bought at the supermarket and then iced. We had that in one year in a competition, believe it or not. So you have to make the underlying cookie that you're decorating. Okay. Olivia, we'd love to have you join, and as I noted earlier, the competition is open to everyone everywhere, which is what's cool about having it online this year.
Exactly.
Okay,
I'm very excited about it.
I am too. We've got about 15 more minutes. We've budgeted an hour for this, so I'm going to move back to this question about how do I enter, and we'll take other questions as they come in. But this is one we often get, and by it, I mean I kind of mean two things. So. Not only how do I physically enter my piece on Cookie Connection, not only how do I upload my actual entry, but even before that, I mean, how do you prepare to enter? What are the kinds of things you need to think about? Now, Laura's touched on some of this already, but I'm going to ask her to chime in here and elaborate because she's entered so many competitions. Like, what are the key things she thinks about as she prepares?
Okay, yes, I have already actually touched the two most important things that I usually stress when I think about entering a competition. The first one is always read the rules very carefully. You need to understand what is asked from you before you actually think about what you are entering, what you want to enter. It's always very important. So please read carefully the instructions, highlight the most important things, usually I prepare a scheme so that I have all my, the important points in front of me in the moment that I am thinking, okay, this is what I want to do. So this is the first thing that I will stress.
Can I interrupt for 1 sec? On that point, not to freak you guys out, like if you miss a rule or your entry doesn't comply to something small, the judges are pretty appreciative of the fact that it takes a lot just to get a competition piece to the floor, or in this case, uploaded to my site. We are impressed that you even attempted to enter. So we will make note of that. We might deduct a couple of points, but we're not going to disqualify something for a minor miss on rules. So don't get too overly wrapped up in that. But again, I completely concur with reading first because it'll certainly streamline your design process. Okay, Second thing.
The second thing that I already spoke about is that think about alternatives. Do have a second plan, because even though you're not traveling and this year, because it is only an online competition, but something can always go wrong. Something that you think was easy, for some reason there is one day that nothing is coming together. It's always like that. So always try to think about different solutions so that you are not stressing too much about the thing, that you're not achieving what you think you were going to, to present. I would say that you need to do a kind of, I don't know how to call it, almost like, Buddhist thinking before you actually before you plan what you want to do. Meaning, gather all your information and then think about your piece. And also, I would also stress that you do not want to stress too much, meaning that you need to enjoy what you're doing. Do not enter if you think that this is going to stress you from an emotional point of view. You need to be enjoying, you need to be relaxed, because that's because we are talking about something creative, and creation doesn't go well together with stress and nervosism and stuff like that. So try to enjoy what you are doing, and just think that will be a learning experience from any point of view, not depending on the result that you will actually get. If I don't know if I'm clear in what I'm trying to say, but I think that being able to enjoy the process is a very important thing.
Yep, I totally agree on that one. Okay, so we have a couple questions. I'm going to move to those. Olivia, she said she just joined the live here, and she wanted to know if this video will be available later for a full review. Yeah. And absolutely yes. When I'm done with a live, it will automatically post to my page. It's my Facebook main business page. I have a personal page, so you want to make sure you're on my business page. I will be also including some links. I can only post them after the fact to the competition overview and also to the registration link on Eventbrite. And again, it's a two-part process. Answering this question, how do I enter? You first register on Eventbrite just to signal that you want to enter. You do not have to submit anything at that time. You have a full however many months it is between now and October 15th to create your piece. And at that point, you would upload your photos and video to Cookie Connection. Lisa Foss question, do 3D projects need to be movable, meaning able to transport from one table to another, or is it okay to assemble in place? I ask because of potential delicate nature of attached 3D components. Okay, well, this is kind of an interesting question.
It is. Definitely.
So this year, since it's online, I don't really care how you transport it. You just need to get a final. You won't need to transport it. You just need to transport it to the table you're going to photograph it on. So if you want to assemble it in place on the table that you're going to be photographing on it because you're afraid to move it, that's fine. We won't really know, and we don't really care. Now, when this competition returns to That Takes the Cake in 2022, this is going to be a real design consideration for those entering then, because they will have to transport it to a physical competition, in which case they may need to bring it in parts and put it together at the show. That's what Laura did. She found a friend that allowed her to assemble in her house. And I think they also allow assembly on the table, though I'm not sure, the competition tables. Yes, but here it's not. It's kind of a moot point. So if you're afraid of moving it, construct it where you're going to photograph it. I would say, though, practically speaking, as a cookie artist who might be selling these things or serving a client, it's nice to think of 3D constructions in a way that you can transport them, because people, I have sold these things, and you do need to get them there. Sometimes it requires taking them in pieces. I hope that answered that question. Bev had a comment, and I just want to ask her to respond to it. She said, read the guidelines rule several times. It took me more than once to make sure I understood what I was reading. So I'm sorry, guys, they're a little bit long. I wanted to put everything out there so it would be crystal clear and there would be no questions, but sometimes that freaks people out and they don't like to read through all that material. So I am wondering from Bev if there's anything that was particularly confusing that we ought to clarify here today. So we'll wait for her to answer.
We are going to see. Well, if I may, I would say that from my competitor point of view, so thinking about my experience of last year, I think that actually Even though it's true that you might need to go through the rules a couple of times, but I think that having all the rules clearly written out, it was actually an advantage. And I think that these, in my opinion, I had the idea that the competition was very professional. Was absolutely the level of the competition was becoming higher. The more I was going through the rules. I don't know if it makes sense, but I really thought that it was really well written, because everything is clearly written out. So if you have doubts, you just need to maybe go through it a couple of times. But I think it's actually simple. It's just a little bit long, but I think it's simple to read it.
Well, I appreciate that. And I should say that the reason the rules are as specific as they are is because one of the things that we really think is incredibly important and pride ourselves on is the objectivity of the judging process. So if you put out vague rules that are open to interpretation and ambiguity, then it kind of creates an unlevel playing field for those entering. So we like to be very specific so that people come in with a common understanding. That's also partly why we're doing these lives, to make sure that those people who are confused by them get the questions answered. We want everybody to feel that the competition is fair and that they're being evaluated as everybody else would be evaluated. Thanks, Bev. I just want to make sure, because nothing is ever perfect with any competition. We're also doing this online, as I said a couple of times, for the first time this year. So I've had to rewrite rules. We're having to rewrite judging criteria, most likely, etc. So, if things aren't clear in this new stuff that I'm putting forward, I would like to correct that. So Teresa asked, are we listing our ingredients? I don't need to, we don't need to know what's in the cookies. However, in the area where you describe techniques and tools and things, if there's something pictured on your entry, for instance, like a metallic paint, for instance, that the judges might think is inedible because some of them aren't FDA or approved in another country for consumption, then we just want you to point that out. But basically, you shouldn't be doing anything that would lead us to think that it couldn't be eaten. So the short answer to that is no, you're not listing your ingredients unless you feel like it's something unique or that the judges need to clearly know what it is. I hope that answers the question. Not sure, Olivia asked, not sure if it's been mentioned how much for entry. Do you mean how much is the registration fee? It's a $15 registration fee that you would pay on Eventbrite at the time of registering. It is non-refundable. We have a certain amount of costs that go into administering the various platforms that the competition is running on, and I am just trying to offset some of those costs. I also put a small fee on it because I think when people pay a small fee, they're more committed to following through on their entry, and we want to make sure we want to see as many entries as possible in the competition, just because we think it makes for a more lively and fun competition. So it's a $15 USD
Yes.
fee.
Regarding these, actually, there was an earlier question that we skipped from Teresa Smith, and she was asking, when can we pay?
Oops, I lost your audio. Okay, I got it back. So she asked, when can we pay? So you pay at the time of registering on Eventbrite, which I'm encouraging people to do early, again, so that we get a better sense of the numbers entering so we can plan the evaluation process. You would pay then, and then you upload your entry when it's ready, which is later. So you might, so there is a risk, a $15 risk. If you pay now and then decide, I don't want to enter, you're out $15. But that will go to supporting the competition and helping us be able to put it on and be able to put it on next year. So just some kind of bare bones, brass tacks reality of putting on these competitions. Everybody here is doing it on a volunteer basis. I volunteer my time to organize it. It's a ton of time. Laura and all my judges are volunteering their judging time, which is always quite a lot of time. Even at the physical competitions, it's about 2 solid days of evaluating and writing feedback forms. So So those entry fees, if we have enough of them, will offset some of the costs of the platforms. The Eventbrite platform and Cookie Connection platforms also cost me money each month to run. So it offsets some of that. And if there's money left over, I will be paying some of the judges. If you're out $15, consider it goes towards a good cause. So other questions.
Yeah.
Annette, I've never entered a 3D cookie contest before, being in Canada. As a novice entering the contest, I think it's fabulous that you won't know whose is whose for judging. It will be hard not posting progress pictures on social media. Yeah, okay, so that's a key thing. Okay, so and this is also stated in our rules. Because we judge blind, you guys can't post progress photos. Because all of us, scout the internet and we'll see that, and then we'll know whose is whose. Now, when you upload your entry, you will have to enter your name and phone number, and they need to match the information that you registered with on Eventbrite. So make note of your name and phone number and email address, and make sure they're the exact same ones, because I'll be making sure that only paid entries get judged. I will see your names at that point, because I am going to be doing those cross checks personally. However, I'm going to be then screening or masking all that information before the judges actually get into the database. So they will only see your entry as identified by a number. And so they won't know who they're evaluating, but I will, just because I need to do those kinds of cross references. But again, I am not judging this year, which is why we have Laura as a new judge.
Yeah, thank you.
Any specific date to submit the artwork after we registered? So let me review the schedule. I'm going to move back up to it.
Mm-hmm.
So again, registration's open. It was open July 12th. You can sign up to say, hey, I plan to enter at any time. That's where you pay the $15 fee, and that's where you will automatically be sent. As soon as you register, you'll get an email from Eventbrite. Look for it in your junk mail box if it doesn't come to your main box. That will contain information as to where to upload the entries on Cookie Connection. Only paid registrants will get those links. And they'll come as soon as you register. However, you don't need to upload the photos and videos to Cookie Connection until October 15th. Yep. So the entries are due October 15th, but you can register anytime between now and then. You can also upload your entry before October 15th. If you're done early, go ahead and upload it. The databases are open and ready to receive any entries as of July 12th. So anyway, but no pressure. I'd encourage you to use the time to create and get as much as you can out of that creation process.
Yeah. Yeah, you have 3 months to think about what you want to do, so you have plenty of time, I think. But I would also, I'm going to say this against myself, because I'm a procrastinator. I'm a real procrastinator, and I usually enter at the very last moment. But I would say, if you can, do not wait until the very last moment to upload your photos on the last day, because you might end up being caught in a uploading issue. Sometimes they can take photos and videos can take a lot of time uploading. So do not wait last minute, last hour of the last day. I
completely agree with that. At least start the day before, because who knows, you might have an internet glitch, and there's nothing we can do about that. If they're not in on time, they're not in on time. So, and I can see timestamps on every entry. So I won't evaluate entries. We will not evaluate entries that are late. Catherine asked a question. Are we limited to one entry, or can we pay 2 fees and enter both 2D and 3D or both themes? You can enter as many times as you want. So when you go into the Eventbrite link, you'll have the option of selecting 2D or 3D. You can select both. You can enter multiple times in a category as well. If you think you have 2 great ideas for 2D or 3D and you want to do both, by all means, enter multiple times. The $15 fee is per entry. There's no easy way for me to do it otherwise. So it is per entry. So you can enter as many times as you want. I've seen a number of people already entering in both categories. So, and again, you can enter more than once in a category as well. If you don't know how many times you want to enter and you're mid-process and you say, hey, I've got another great idea, I want to enter this too, you can always go back to the Eventbrite form and register again in the other category. So you can come back to it and re-register, or not re-register, but add to a registration. Olivia, sorry for so many questions. No, we love questions. This is great. This is how we all get on the same page. Is there any specific theme and maximum size of the 3D cookie project? Yes. Now, all of this information is going to be contained in the competition overview. It's already there up on Cookie Connection. And again, I'll put the link into this post when we're done. There are two different themes. There's a different one for 2D and a different one for 3D. They both are words. So the 2D theme is the word essential, and the 3D theme is the word pivot. They relate to how we might have experienced last year going through the pandemic. So we want people to create stories that relate to those two words, that talk about what they mean to them personally, both last year and even today. We purposely chose, as I mentioned earlier, pretty abstract themes because I tend to think they cause people to think more out of the box, less likely to copy a logo or something they've seen on social media, because they really need to think about what that word or that theme means to them. What's the maximum size of the 3D project? Again, this is also in the submission requirements. There's a minimum of 12 decorated cookies that must go into the construction. There's no maximum cookie count, and the entire entry must fit into a 2 by 2 by 3 foot tall area. That's 61 by 61 by 91 centimeters. It can be smaller than that. It just can't be bigger. But those kinds of requirements are spelled out in the specific category submission requirements, and there are links in the competition overview to both of those. Victoria, please, can you give some examples on the given themes? Not really. All I can say is, just because this is what we want you guys to think about, this is part of the competition. So some questions I can answer if they're related to rules, but if they're questions that relate to how would I design, we don't really want to answer that. All I can say is that your piece just needs to relate to that word. So, for instance, pivot.
What do you mean?
The literal definition
of to you.
The literal definition of pivot means to turn or shift. So this is the theme for the 3D category. How did that relate to you in the last year, or even now? Have you shifted your business? Have you shifted your mindset? Have you shifted your way of living? And if so, or maybe you haven't shifted anything at all. And if so, how would you express that in cookies? So we're going to be pretty general about it because we want people to personalize it to their experience. I hope that helps and isn't too. And again, you will have an area in the entry upload where you can explain how you interpreted that theme. So if you feel like it's not going to be obvious to the judges, we've allowed a few hundred words for you to describe what you meant by what you did. And I would spend a little bit of time on that, because sometimes the piece, it's not obvious how it connects to the theme. I've seen this many years, even when the themes are more specific. It's like, wow, where did this come from? And the theme description are sometimes really helpful because they indicate that somebody's really thought in a creative way about their piece. Sometimes the theme descriptions aren't so helpful, but we do look at them. We do look at them, particularly if the piece doesn't scream the theme to us.
Yes, there is a lot of freedom this year in the theme. So I think it is challenging, but in a positive way, meaning that you have a lot of space, a lot of creation space, let's say, to come up with your solution. And I think that probably, tell me if you agree with me, Julia, but that we did this on purpose because, again, it's an international competition. So we all have so different backgrounds and cultures.
Right.
And it will be very interesting to see what these two words means in different, in different areas. But at the same time, we have been living the same experience last year. So I think it will be very interesting. I'm very looking forward to see what people will come up with.
I think that's a nice way of putting it. Okay, so I'm going to move on to some thank yous because we're a little bit over time, and I know Lara has a busy day. And if you have other questions, please do post them because we're going to be concluding in a few minutes. But I do want to thank our sponsors. As I mentioned at the top of the competition, the primary reason for competing in my mind is to challenge yourself and grow your skills. However, we happen to have some pretty great prizes as well. I think we collect more in prizes for any cookie competition than anywhere in the world. So we've got 13,000 actually we've got more like 13,500 in prizes now, 7,000 of which is in cash. So the winners will actually walk away with a lot of, physical things to honor their wonderful work. Question here from Diana. Any specific way to take the video on the artwork? Okay, so let me pause there and we'll continue to thank sponsors in a bit. Yeah, so we do require a video submission with both categories. This is so judges can really see it as if they were walking around the piece. We're trying to simulate a judging experience we might have if we were actually at an actual competition. No specific way to take it other than that we are asking that it be set against a solid background. It can be any color, but we don't want the video stage. We don't want other props with it. We just want the cookie piece against a plain background, and we want you to take as many angles of it as possible. Try to simulate what it would look like to a judge if they were walking around the piece. This is true for 2D too. If a 2D cookie is really big and spans a large area of your table, walk us around each part of it as well as show us a big view of it. You can take it on your iPhone. We're not looking for professional videos. The video will need to be short. There's a 100 megabyte upload limit on the site. That means it'll probably be a couple minutes long max. So you might have to shoot it a couple of times to capture everything you want to capture in it. Yep. Can anyone donate for prizes? This is Teresa. Yes, absolutely. The sponsorship call, is open to sponsors at any time. And there's some information also in the Cookie Connection blog under Julia M. Usher's Cookie Competition category that talks about how to sponsor. We have 2 sponsorship levels, which let me turn to the sponsorship levels. We've got silver sponsors. Laura is one of them. She's donated some classes, her wonderful classes to the mix.
Online classes.
Others have donated other things. Sponsoring to the silver level, I think requires a $500 commitment in non-cash donations or a $250 cash contribution. So, Teresa, that's what you'd be looking at as kind of the threshold for sponsoring. And we've got a number of gold sponsors who've contributed a bit more. All great companies. You'll be hearing, there's a post about them on Cookie Connection already. I encourage you to go there, show your love for these companies by clicking on their links and visiting their websites. I'll also be doing some posts as we move forward on the competition, sharing a little bit more about our sponsors. We applaud them and are really appreciative for all the support they've given to the competition. Many have been longtime competition sponsors, and we appreciate that as well. We've got some new sponsors as well from different parts of the world, so that's kind of unique to the competition this year too. We've attracted some sponsors from South Africa and Japan and all over the place. Annette asks, I think I read the cash prize will be divided amongst the winners per category. How many winners per category? There are 3 winners, first, second, and third for 2 categories, so there are 6 winners in total. So yeah, the 7,000 in cash will be divided not necessarily evenly, but across those 6 winners, as well as will the product-related prizes. Now, the product-related prizes are all in the form of gift certificates, so they will be relayed to you digitally, so you don't have to worry about getting them shipped through the mail, which is kind of a challenge these days. So absolutely everything is happening online, including the transmission of prizes. But again, the biggest prize I think ought to be what you learn and the skills you develop as you go through the process. And hopefully, learning from the feedback that the judges will provide this is an area that I've been particularly vague about because, again, I don't know how many people will be entering. There's the possibility for many more than we have when we do a physical competition, just because people can come from anywhere. So we may have to limit our feedback. I'm going to be upfront about that in ways we haven't when we've been at the Austin show. At the Austin show, we wrote out written feedback forms for every single entrant that showed all their scores across different criteria. And again, I'm going to just have to look at that and evaluate how much of that we're going to be able to do this year once we know, have a better idea of how many people are entering, which is part of the reason I'm asking people to register early. So that's all I had to say.
Yep.
And other than we can't wait to see what you make. So, and register early. I think I've said that a billion times.
Really looking forward to it.
Yeah, we're all really looking forward to it, and hope you guys really have fun with it. Lara, any additional parting comments? And then I'll let you guys go, and we'll post this video onto my Facebook page.
I think I'm okay, but actually I have a question myself. What about Carrie Vincent prize? I mean, is there a prize for the winner of this?
Oh, the Best in Show?
Yeah, the Best in Show.
There will be. I haven't quite figured out what it is yet, but I'm gonna make that work behind the scenes. So there'll be a special extra something for that person. But the biggest reward will just be having that special honor that you can share across the internet. But yeah, I am going to be adding either a cash prize or some sort of digital kind of product prize to that as well.
Good.
Thank you everyone for joining us. We had a good time chatting with you, and again, we really can't wait to see what you do. Look for this video on my Facebook page, and I'll be adding some links underneath it to all the things that I mentioned, the registration page on Eventbrite, the competition overview, which is a blog post on Cookie Connection, and there may be something else that I need to post there, but those are the big things. So that's all I have for now. I'm gonna stop the live. It looks like we're out of questions. And before I do that, I just want to thank Laura once again for joining me today. She lent a really great perspective on both competing and judging, and we're so super excited to have her as part of the team. She's been a tremendous support so far, and we look forward to continuing.
It's me, the one that is thanking you, because actually even the judging experience is something that really, really gives me a lot. So I'm really happy about it. And so thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you. Have a great day, everybody. I am off to decorate cookies that gave me a little bit of trouble yesterday. I might have to do a few redos today. So it happens to all of us. See you later. Thanks so much.
See you.